But for me, making a life means having compassion. Doing those things on the weekends that build relationships with your family. I guess you should do it all year round, not just the weekend, just that's for me. But it also means a genuine interest in another's culture and well-being, and not just tolerance. Not just coming together because it's a round table once a month. What do you do with me, and how do you interact with me the other 11 months? That matters. What matters is the care for humanity, the appreciation of all in terms of a focus on relationships and our peoples, and the concerns about injustice and prejudice. So the challenges that our students face. We have many in terms of the challenges, and I have indicated to you that our school board, and I think it mirrors probably the Catholic board as well, 43% of our board's student population is of East Asian, South Asian, and Southeast Asian descent. And we know that some are the parents are first generation, second generation, or third generation born to immigrant families. And we know that some Canadian-born students don't speak English. They are in families and homes where English is not their first language, even though they're born here. So we need to keep that in mind when we talk about programs and challenges of our students. About 15%, 5 million people are of Asian descent in our country, 15%, making it the largest visible minority group in Canada. So do we hear their voices? Do leaders of Asian descent shape the destinies of tomorrow? Do they have conversations with those who are policymakers and game changers? Are they game changers? How do they get to the table there? The TDSB data shows that as a group, East Asian and South Asian secondary students achieve the very highest in terms of academic achievement. They have the highest proportion of students entering university. They're hardworking, they dedicate their time to homework, 13, 14 hours a week, but we also know that there are some challenges. And some of those challenges include they are ranked lowest in emotional well-being and self-esteem. That's their words from the census. They don't feel that they're part of the leadership conversation. They don't feel that they are heard sometimes in the schools. So we had a conversation at lunch today in terms of our schools. We conduct school district reviews. So this year we have 125 reviews where teams of educators, principals, and superintendents go into our schools. And I often hear, sometimes I hear teachers say or principals say, this is a good school. I love coming to this school. And they will drive 2 hours, they say, because I want to teach in this school. So when I turn around, or my superintendent, sometimes I've got them now asking this question, turn around and say, why do you think this is a good school? And they say, this is a good school because none of the kids talk back. None of the students ever break a rule. That's an overly compliant school. A compliant school is not an effective school. And what we have seen is in some of our student populations, our communities where there are schools with high Asian descent populations, Chinese or East Asian populations in particular, they are extremely compliant. We want to educate minds that challenge, that debate, that question, that have that inquiry and the courage to seek adversity and to bounce back, to be resilient. So a compliant school is not necessarily an effective school. We also know that this group of students, East Asian followed by Southeast Asian students, have lost confidence in themselves during high school. They have a higher percentage, 56 versus 48% in our TDSB, 56% of our students of Asian descent feel they don't have the confidence as they increase in grades. That's based on their census information. In addition, both East and Southeast Asian students were least likely to feel comfortable speaking up in class, 36% versus 50%. So if you're of Asian descent, You just don't feel like you might, I don't know if you put your hands up anymore. Do you still do that in class, right? Putting your hands up. You sort of hold back and you're quieter. And sometimes I'm a mom of 3 girls and they have their friends come over and I do watch, the interaction at the house there and how do even in a social setting, how do they conduct themselves so that they're part of the fabric and part of the conversation? And how can we build that esteem up? So that's a barrier. They also had the lowest proportions rating themselves doing well in oral communication. The courage to speak up orally and to present. They rate it very low. They had the lowest proportions rating themselves in terms of their leadership skills. They ranked themselves 44% versus nearly 60% of the rest of the population in the TDSB, if you were of Asian descent. Both groups of students, both groups of Asian students also had the lowest proportions reporting that their parents talked with them regularly about work, about schoolwork, and that their parents praised them less often in terms of schooling. So this is about a parent engagement piece too. It doesn't all belong to the school in terms of the challenges our students face. So I want to go back here on this slide here. Here are some terrific leaders of Asian descent who I have followed a bit, who have had the pleasure and the honor of interacting and having conversations with. And there are lots of others. I decided not to be political, so I didn't mention any politicians along the way. But there are folks here who have made, except David Tabuchi there, but folks along the way who've made an impact. And when we talk about finding ways to support our students, and I have students here, when you don't feel confident, I would encourage you to find a role model that makes you feel proud of, that you're proud of. What characteristics, what are the perseverance and what are the characteristics that they display that encourage you to go to the next step? We don't want our children to be living in a bubble. We don't want students to not face adversity. It's how do you teach them to bounce back from adversity that matters. Because life is filled with adversity and challenge. It's what you do to solve and to keep the focus and the optimism alive in your heart that matters. So here are some that have mattered to me. This is something, this line here I love. I love it because all I ever wanted was a world without maps. I like it because to me it means a world without borders. It means that we can educate and we can share and we can consider humanity as one and not have opposition and all those things that we have in terms of world conflict, but a world without maps. And I've already spoken to these 3 slides, so I'm going to move through this very quickly. What does cultural responsiveness actually look like in a school? I'm wondering if, do you know, students? What does it mean to you when your teacher's inclusive? Anybody? Do you talk about inclusive and equity in your schools? I guess I shouldn't put the Catholic students on since I don't have any of my students here. But I know that you must feel that you're part of the conversation, that your voices are heard, that in our schools we have data that comes out. There are conversations in terms of school district reviews and whatnot and school improvement plans, but it's way more than that. So I want to just move through there. Like in the TDSB, we have in all our publications actually real students that belong to the TDSB. These are our students each and every day. There's not one publication that I'm going to put out in the time that I'm here that will have a face of another student or another staff member, because I don't believe in buying stock photos. Not when you have 250,000 students to draw from. Not when you have 39,000 employees that you're tremendously proud of, right? So we're proud of our kids. This is the slide I want to focus on, cultural responsive leadership. And I mentioned this at the ACENET meeting on Saturday. Sustainability, we're here because we care about this conversation, not just because we're invited, I hope. We're here because we care about roundtables that question, that debate, that result in new ways of thinking and solving challenges together. So for me, culturally responsive leadership includes thinking and leading beyond me. It is my hope that when I leave the TDSB, that the spirit of conversation and a strong succession planning, that the next group that we've left behind will take this forward. Every year I come to these roundtables, and almost sometimes it's the same group of people. So I challenge this group to bring 3 different people the year for number 11. For when we have our roundtable discussion, the 11th roundtable, who are the different faces in the conversation? How can you bring them into the picture? We've talked about internationalization and humanity, and I think it's important for us to always question assumptions. Remember, a compliant room and a compliant school is not an effective one. And we always have to inform and educate. I won't read that one there, but essentially it's the collective will that changes the directions. And finally, I want to leave this comment here. You know, David Tabucci, who I have had conversations with, you know, really talked to me about, in his book, about his roots and valuing it. No matter who you are, your roots and where you come from, as you get older, maybe it's me now in my time in my life, it matters. And it matters to reach back, to honor your past in order to move forward for the future. So with that, thank you for your time, and I look forward to the conversation.